What if I told you Blake Lively just gambled her entire case on the sworn words of a proven liar? What if I showed you that she has been caught red-handed, teaming up with James Booka, a man who changes his story at every turn, deletes evidence, and rewrites history like it's his full-time job? Tonight, I reveal the receipts, and by the end, you'll see exactly how Judge Lyman saw through their manipulation and called her out in court. This isn't speculation, this is documented, and the truth is darker than Blake ever wanted exposed. Blake Lively, I believe, has made a deal with the devil. She is now standing on the sworn declaration of James Booka, a man already known for lies. Yesterday, her attorney filed in court a response tied to James's declaration, and suddenly the picture became clear. James filed that declaration to hand Blake ammunition. Hidden inside it was her letter, strategically used to claim that Wayfair was withholding evidence. But the attempt to manipulate the court in such a blatant way did not go unnoticed. Judge Lyman scolded Blake directly for filing an improper letter. James's declaration itself was shocking, not because of what it said, but because it was the exact opposite of everything James had already stated, time and time again, to multiple people, and even in a sworn declaration from June. The timing was suspicious, and right on cue, Blake seized on it, racing to present it to the judge as justification. This is why I need this evidence. But she knew better. She knew she was not entitled to that evidence. She also knew much of it was likely protected under attorney-client privilege. Yet she bet her case on James, a narrator so unreliable, he might as well have been writing fiction. And the judge? He saw right through the games. So let's talk about James Suzuka, this declaration circus, and why Blake's partnership with him looks like a calculated but desperate gamble. I will share evidence of James's endless flip-flopping, how he and Leslie Sloan smeared Justin Ballon, how James ran back to Ballon only when he realized liability was closing in, and how he ultimately ran to Blake, becoming her co-conspirator in presenting a false declaration designed to mislead the court. This story is about to get very, very juicy. Blake has been locked in a fight with Wayfair, convinced she is entitled to their communications with individuals even after she initiated her lawsuit. Her theory? That Wayfair was running an ongoing smear campaign. But here's the irony. It is ludicrous. Wayfair has every right to defend itself, just as Blake has run to the media to smear Justin. In this case, because so much of her lawsuit has crumbled, she is now leaning on James as her proof, claiming that text messages included by Wayfair were false and knowingly inserted into the record to perpetuate a smear campaign. On that basis, she argues the lawsuit was filed in bad faith, perfectly aligning with her sanctions claims. Her legal team's argument is that Exhibit A, a text dated December 25th, undercuts a central claim by Wayfair's defense, that Leslie Sloan told James that Blake was sexually assaulted by Justin Baldoni. They insist that statement had no reasonable basis. But here's the catch. That was never the reason Wayfair sued. The lawsuit stemmed from the New York Times. Yet Exhibit A is now being spun to argue that Brian Friedman and Melissa Nathan knew by December 25th their core allegation was baseless. And since they didn't produce that December 25th message, Blake claims the defendants are deliberately withholding evidence. This is the real motivation behind James's declaration. His December 25th texts are suddenly being wielded as proof that Wayfair was hiding communications. But the reality? That evidence is a tiny fraction of a much larger lawsuit built on entirely different grounds. Still, Blake and James used this timing, this single date, as their ticket to demand evidence beyond the December 20th cutoff. Convenient, isn't it? James's own messages reveal even more. He told Brian Freeman that Leslie Sloan bashed Melissa, tried to bait him into saying Melissa was planting stories, and badmouthed Blake, but never once mentioned sexual harassment. He admitted in writing, never once did she say anything about sexual assault. Yet later, when it suited him, James suggested otherwise. The contradictions pile up. Worse, James's credibility collapsed further when he admitted his phone had been stolen, wiping out his communications with Sloan. Later, he admitted to deleting emails and clearing his iCloud. In plain terms, evidence was deleted. Whether intentional or not, it was gone. And then came the excuses. First, that he had no access, then that he deleted to protect his identity. Either way, the judge saw it as manipulation. And let's not forget James's biggest professional betrayal, leaking his sources' information. As a Daily Mail reporter, he gave Leslie Sloan's source details directly to Melissa Nathan and Brian Freeman, violating journalistic ethics. Instead of staying neutral, he became part of the story. When Daily Mail realized this, they turned on him. He was no longer protected. Blake, meanwhile, is framing James as a whistleblower who was fired unfairly. But the confidential 7-page letter from Daily Mail to James tells another story. They accused him of dishonesty, confirmed he actively inserted himself into litigation, and placed the blame squarely on him. They even cited his actions as shockingly dishonest. Their words, not mine. They acknowledged that James explicitly told Melissa Nathan that Sloan said Baldoni sexually assaulted Blake. That one message poured gasoline on the fire, and Daily Mail made it clear he crossed the line. Daily Mail refused to give him whistleblower protection, pointing out that he had voluntarily engaged, broken neutrality, and betrayed their editorial standards. They even documented his erratic behavior, including keying an elevator door in their New York office and posting Sloan's subpoena on social media with provocative commentary. These weren't isolated mistakes. This was a pattern. And yet Blake still built her case on him. She fired Mark Garagos because even he realized that James's contradictions opened him up to perjury charges. James had misled his own attorney, misled Daily Mail, misled Wayfair, misled Blake, misled everyone. His stories contradicted themselves depending on who he spoke to. Sometimes he admitted authorization, other times he denied it. Sometimes he called it a mistake, other times insisted it was deliberate whistleblowing. He shifted constantly, desperate to escape liability. At one point, James even drafted a red-line declaration attempting to rewrite history once again, this time claiming he never authored the text that said Blake was sexually assaulted. That is the level of desperation we're talking about. He was willing to perjure himself again. And then came the final blow. Judge Lyman's order. The judge recognized exactly what was happening. That James's conveniently timed December 25th declaration was filed to give Blake an excuse to demand more evidence. The judge wasn't fooled. He wrote that Blake's letter was improper, irrelevant, and did not need a response. He essentially struck it down himself, sparing Wayfair the trouble. In plain language, Judge Lyman told Blake, "You tried to manipulate the court, and I'm not playing along." So where does this leave Blake and James? Teaming up together may look like a strategy, but in truth, it's a desperate cover-up. Both participated in smear campaigns, both manipulated narratives, and both now cling to each other as their credibility collapses. But make no mistake, this partnership will not save them. James's lies are on record, Blake's tactics are exposed, and the judge has already signaled he's watching closely. At the end of the day, James is going down in flames, and Blake, if she keeps standing beside him, may very well go with him. Don't miss the next headline. Like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell.